and I see this wheel going away over here, I can basically butt block this end who's crashing, because now I know he's my 2 if the wheel went away. Now that butt block is essentially like boxing out for a rebound in basketball.
So coaches, I've got Cody Wilson on my screen here, and we're going to talk some inside zone with him. This is fantastic. Thank you, Cody, for joining us. I'm excited to ask you these questions that I think are going to thoroughly stump you. Hopefully
I hope
not.
So. Bring them on.
But anyway, this has been a blast creating this course with you. And for those of you guys watching this or listening to this, this is an official introduction to Coach Cody Wilson. And also just another quick note that his course on the inside zone is available over at CoachTube. You can find it under the Pro Style Spread Offense account over there. And if you purchase it right now, we'll have a special on it. If you get it before it closes, I believe it's going to close by this weekend sometime, depending on whether you're listening to this on the podcast or whether you got this in my email. If you get it before the special launch closes, then you will get access to a live webinar with Coach Wilson where you can come on and ask him any question you would like to about the inside zone. So pretty cool thing that we're offering only to those that sign up and get the course before that time expires. So anyway, Coach, glad to have you here, and maybe we'll even see a special appearance by one of your cats, who knows. But let me start this off with just this first simple question is the differences between gap schemes and inside zone. I've kind of leaned more towards the gap schemes as a coach. And I think I've never been an offensive line coach. Actually, I take that back. I was for about 2 weeks in the summer until they hired an O-line coach. I've always wanted to be one. But as a coordinator, in my days as a coordinator, I did get my hands pretty dirty with the offensive line because you've got to know that stuff. But I trended more towards the gap schemes because I felt it was just easier for me to understand. What's your opinion between gap schemes and zone? Is one harder or easier to teach than the other?
I think they both have their pros and cons, and I think a little bit of it depends on the kids you got. And just like at school, because most of us are teachers, you got some kids who they might struggle with one concept, but they get another concept. If it's math, they might understand, adding terms together, but they might not understand, multiplying them quite as easily. And other kids are just the opposite. So it does depend a little bit on the kids. But myself, I think there's a lot of carryover and overlap between them. With gap schemes, you got somebody pulling typically from the backside, but play side, their gap responsibility, like on power with the double team, we were talking about this a while ago, that the guard on the double team on the play side is really responsible for the A gap, and the tackle on the play side is responsible for the B gap. Mm-hmm. The same concept is true in the zone, that they're responsible for a gap. Just we call it zone instead because we don't have anybody pulling. So you can use that same teaching point all the way across the board there.
Yeah, I like that. And I don't think I'd ever really heard that before, that there's a lot of similarities. I think in my mind as a coach, I've thought gap is way over here to this extreme and zone is way over here to this extreme. And you either run one, but you can't run the other. So, what would you say to a coach who, feels like that you've got to exclusively run zone to make it work? Do you feel like that's true, or can you run both? Because I see college teams running both. And I'm thinking in my mind, well, yeah, they're college teams. They can do both. Can high school kids do this, or is this just going to blow their mind?
Again, now you got to remember, if you got kids that, they need help getting their name on their paper at school, if it's those kind of kids, you might want to pick a scheme, whether it be a zone scheme or gap scheme or whatever it is for you. But I think most of us I don't think you have to make the decision to only run zone. For myself, in most of the places I've been, we've run our main run plays have been inside zone, empower. And we probably run the inside zone anywhere from 20 to 50% of the time, depending on the year, who we're playing, and kind of what works. Because some years, depending on the linemen that we have, or maybe the running backs, sometimes your running backs, they just can't read one play as well as another. It might be a guy who all he knows how to do is put his head down and go straight forward, and it might be more of a power year for us, even though the lineman might be better. It might be the running back. Or if he's got a little bit of shiftiness to him and he has great eyes and vision, it might be better to run the zone. So just kind of depends. But me, typically, it's going to be at least, at the most 50% if we keep it simple, run inside zone and power, and as little as about 20% if we have a couple other change-up plays in there.
Mm-hmm. Right. Gotcha. Let's get on the chalkboard a little bit. I know you got a way you can draw up some stuff. How do you handle teams that run that nasty gap exchange stuff where they slant that end in? He takes, he's going to go for the running back, which gives the quarterback a pull read, if I'm understanding this correctly. And then when the quarterback pulls it, that linebacker's just sitting out there waiting for him.
Yes. So most of the time, I get this with a 3-3 stack. Are you getting this?
I got it.
Yeah, so here I'd call this a 3-3 stack, and let's say we're running zone to the right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're all blocking to the right, and if we go by the count system that I use here, I like to label the Mike is 0, and the Sam is a play side 1, the end is a play side 2, the nose is the backside 1, and then backside I say whoever is most dangerous between the wheel here and the end. Now the reason why is because the point we're getting at here with the zone exchanges and how they do that twisting and stuff, a lot of the times we would expect that simple rush there by the end so that my tackle can work up and we would expect that he would be on the wheel. Well, that's not always the case. A lot of times people have done this, like you said, to get the read for the quarterback. The running back's going in here and he'll pull. They'll try to get this end to either cross face or to crash really hard to get the pull read, and they have stunted the will linebacker backside to they've predetermined to do that because they want to catch you. They're trying to force the pull read, and they've got somebody in your face on the quarterback. Now, the thing I like about that, though, is still, even if you've got your will over here and the end is crashing down inside, if this is the backside 1, who is the backside 2? And well, the answer to that would be that your backside 2 is still this end right here, and he would technically be the backside 3. Now, this gets into something that's a little bit more of an advanced technique, but it's definitely something that you can get done, is if I'm this tackle and I see, here we go, and I see this will going away over here, I can basically butt block this end who's crashing, because now I know he's my two if the wheel went away. Now that
Mm-hmm.
butt block is essentially like boxing out for a rebound in basketball, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to be in position to be face to face with him and get my hands on him and drive block like I would in a typical situation. That end is going to be, maybe hugging my hip or something like that. As he's crashing down, he might have his hands on my shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
trying to squeeze me down inside. So if I throttle down my feet and chop them down, get my arms back and put your butt on him and just push him back, you're still going to create a crease right here. He's
Mm-hmm.
run himself out of the play, and now with just a simple boxing out like in basketball, I've got him out of the way, so we still got the crease for the running back.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting. So that tackle, he's just gonna when he sees a look like this, he's gonna keep his eyes on the backer who would be the three or who could be a possible two. And if he disappears, then he's gonna know that guy's coming hard down inside. Possibly, I gotta find a way to seal him off.
Yes, yes. And again, most of the time, we're going to expect that it's going to be the end is playing upfield, and linebacker is going to want to be filling, so that we'll get on him right there. And we
Mm-hmm.
just know if he goes away by natural course of events, that if he goes away, even if the end's not coming inside, the end becomes the two now hard, and the
Mm-hmm.
will is the three. And that just comes with practice, just like you would do anybody else. Like even the same thing with this pair right here and this pair right here, with the guard in the center and the guard and the tackle working a zone combo. You can still do the same type drill with your tackle here, a 1-on-2 drill where you have them working these two basic scenarios. And again, it doesn't take a whole lot of time. And if you're one of those guys that wants to get the most out of your dudes at practice, you can have one group set up doing the combo like we have here on the right with the
Mm-hmm.
guard and tackle, or with the guard in the center. And you can have another line of your tackles rotating through on getting this, reading the block to see if they're working up to the wheel, having the end maybe slant across their face and block them, or having the wheel go away and turn it into a butt block. So that would be the three main possibilities that could happen.
Awesome, coach. That makes a lot of sense. So do you feel like, I mean, that definitely answers, kind of the question of how do you handle gap exchange? You find teams when you do this to them, when you still block and they're trying to gap exchange, do they keep doing it or do they stop doing it?
Well, it depends. If you're just chopping off a few yards at a time, they'll keep it up because they think that they're going to make you make a mistake. But if you start ripping off a few, 15, 20-yard runs or even more, they're going to get out of it real quick, and they're going to either come up with a plan C, because this probably wasn't plan A, or they're going to go back to plan A and say, you know what, we're just going to be who we are, play base defense or whatever it is they do, and say,
Mm-hmm.
well, you're going to beat us this way, and we're going to try to keep you from pulling off those big yards at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see how that could happen. Because if you're zoning this and, that end gets blocked and that will's gone, I mean, that cutback lane right there, that would be nasty. There's nobody there till you deep in the secondary level, which is not good for defenses. That's for sure.
And that is an interesting thing. We talk about the sorry, coach, just while I'm thinking about it. I like to teach that we're pressing the play side A gap, and we really aim for the right butt cheek of the center.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of coaches will talk, at least I've heard this a lot over the years, about the zone play being a you can bang it, you can
Mm-hmm.
bounce it, or you can bend it.
Yeah.
And in my experience, I don't get very many bounces. And I know we talk about will read the first down guy past the center, and if he gets hooked, this, that, or the other. Well, I found that doesn't happen hardly ever. So I don't even teach trying to hook those guys. So for me, I've taken out this bounce approach, and that only happens if I've got a very gifted running back and he happens to see it, and it probably doesn't happen but 1 or 2 times out of 100 that
Mm-hmm.
it's going to hit a gap to backside almost every time. And really, if we did like a hit chart on it, it probably hits in one of the backside gaps far more than it does even in the play side A gap. Like it really hits off of the backside guard and tackle probably 70% of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That from what I've seen, the early years when one of my teams was running zone, I would totally agree with you. I wasn't, I didn't know a whole lot about it at that point, but I just knew, man, we kept hitting the cutbacks, and those were the big gains, and that's where the hole was. And we get, my athletic director told me one time, he said, Coach, those lanes, I'm telling you, I don't know what you're doing with those guys, but those are some huge lanes your back is running through. And and I was like, I stopped and thought about it for a second. I thought, I think most people think that we're like physically clearing people out, like pushing them to create these huge lanes. You're not really doing that. It's just as the defense is reacting to the motion and the movement, it leaves huge, massive lanes sometimes in the opposite direction if they're not disciplined. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting he said that. So one last question for you, Coach. If you've got a smaller group of offensive linemen, is a zone scheme something you should just steer away from? Or is it something that maybe with technique, and if you've got smart guys, you think that they could run it as well as maybe a gap scheme?
I think there's no reason that you have to completely abandon it. I played at a small Division III school, and I was an offensive lineman, and I was 5'10", 240 pounds. I was the smallest offensive lineman in my conference, but I started for 3 years. So I believe that you can be a technician, which is what I was, and we ran the zone, we ran the power, we ran pin and pull schemes. You can get in there and you can do it, and you can do it against really good competition, but your 5 guys up there have to have a lot of grit to them and believe that their performance is not based off of the size that God has given them. But it's that old saying that we have. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got some dudes like that you can rally and get them to run through a brick wall, it doesn't matter how big they are. There's some technique to it. There is some finesse, but I really hate when I hear coaches that aren't offensive line coaches say, oh, well, all the zone is finesse blocking. No,
Mm-hmm.
we're getting in your face, and it's a physical run play. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
But me, I believe so strongly in the zone that there's not very many reasons that I would ever get away, totally ditch it altogether. I probably wouldn't. And I don't believe small offensive linemen is the excuse. Now, it might be a thing where you have some other runs built in to protect your guys, to keep the defense on edge, like you might have pin and pull in there, or you might use these same principles of the inside zone and run more of a stretch or a mid zone where you're getting the defense to flow more and then work off of their own movement and cut back off of them. Like the stretch is a great example of that. Those linebackers are going to flow with the running back to his aiming point, and they're going to set themselves up for the block. So I don't even have to physically move them out of the way as an offensive lineman. I've just got to understand the concept, where we're trying to hit it at, and then just get my body in the right position.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. I like that. I like that a lot. All right. Well, thanks, Coach, for answering some of these questions that I've tried to, as accurately as possible, reproduce to you or throw at you. I think some of these questions our viewers would have about Inside Zone. So hopefully they helped answer questions for them as well. Just a quick reminder, coaches, that we've got this Inside Zone course. It is now up. It is now available. It has just a phenomenal overview of just the Inside Zone play with a bunch of tags. And I know, Coach, you've added some more tags that I'm going to upload to it, right?
Yes, sir.
And so those tags, if you're not familiar with what tags are, is you take the basic Inside Zone run play and maybe you tag it with a code name or something, and it turns it into a split zone. So it's almost like you've got two plays with one blocking scheme, just slight variations, and you add these tags and it makes it look different, or it gives your guys just a little shift in the way to block it, but it's the same essential play. So we've got a bunch of tags in there. We've got some fantastic drills and drill work in there. We've got virtually every defensive front you could see, at least that's within the basic structure of defensive fronts that you see. I know you added one where coaches are now starting to see a lot of this 4-eye stuff. So we added that in there. But anyway, and of course, I think the biggest bonus, the one that I'd be most excited for, is the fact that if you get this course before this offer expires very soon here, you'll be able to jump onto a live Q&A with Coach and be able to just ask your questions and just try and get anything figured out. Whatever you have, you can ask it, and we'll, hopefully answer any other questions that come up that maybe you didn't get to on the course. So thanks again, Coach, for coming and stopping by. I'm excited for this. I haven't seen anything out there that's this detailed and this in depth with techniques, drills, scheme, everything Inside Zone. So I know I'm personally am wanting to run Inside Zone, even though I'm a gap guy. So I'm no longer just a gap guy. I'm both, and so I like them both. It's and I'm not just saying that to say it because I think this is cool, but it really makes sense to me now. That's why I like it a lot more than I previously did. So thanks again, Coach. We'll be keeping in touch, and guys, if you do get the course, we'll be in touch with you about when we do that live conference with Cody. So thanks again, Coach, and hope you have a great week.
You too. Thanks. Appreciate it.